What's good, sis? All right, beautiful people. Happy Wednesday. It is February 15th, 2023, day 334 of year 4 of reading through books, laws, and prophets. And today we're picking back up in the Romance of the Red Star, which is another name for a waspy. And how did I move that? Oh, that's what threw me off. They still say Cycle of Sathantes. Lord's Record 4, Cycle of Sathantes. We're going to read the last chapter, which is chapter 4. And then, you know what? I think that's the only chapter we're going to read from here. Yeah, before we go into the Cycle of Asham. So we're just going to read this last chapter. We're going to pause, and we're going to finish all the way to the end. Field Guide to the Spirit World. Reading these last two appendices, B and C, which shouldn't take us that long, and then we'll be completely done with this all the way, right? So tomorrow we start these scenes, Gospel of Peace. All right, beautiful people. Oh man, Father, we thank you that you make bad things good. All right, y'all, hold on. I gotta pull something up real quick. Okay. That's what it was. All right. All right, y'all. Page 43 in Cycle of Sathantes, or in Big Blue, which I didn't tell you the page. It is page 40. Page 40, about this time. Yep, page 40 in Big Blue. Let me just go ahead and move this marker here till tomorrow. All right, y'all. About this time, man began to use his lips and tongue in enunciating words prior to which he spoke in the thorax. And the Lord spake unto the Ehims, saying, that the labor of the Lord may be remembered on the earth. Go provide me a stone, and I will engrave it with my own hand, and it shall be called Simoan, because it shall be a testimony unto all the nations and peoples on the earth of the first written language in all the world. And the Ehims prepared a stone and hewed it flat, and then polished it smooth. And the Lord came down in the night and engraved it. And the Lord, through his angels, taught the Ehims the meaning of the characters engraved thereon. And so there is a whole chapter devoted to this, and I believe it's in the book with the shenanigans. The book of Safa, right? Actually on page 521, that's where it is, that plate. And it's 121 of them, if I remember correctly. Yeah, 121. And it goes through each one by one. And if you're looking at the chart, it's starting at the top, going from left to right. Yep. All right. Zachary, Yahoo, Hannah, Tabitha, Shalom, family, and everybody else. I'm sorry. Everybody else here hanging out in the background of both places in Facebook and YouTube. Top of the day to you. Jamil, Shalom, sis. Okay. Page 43. And the Lord said, go into all the cities in all the countries and provide ye copies like the tablet I have given. And the angels inspired the Ehims to make tablets and to read them, that the first language of the earth might be preserved to the races of men. Now the Ehims partly obeyed the Lord and partly obeyed the way of the flesh, and they became warriors and destroyers. Nevertheless, they harmed not the Ehims, nor suffered harm to come upon them. The Lord had commanded the Ehims to make eunuchs of the yaks, the monstrosities, and use them as servants. For the Lord saw the yaks were not capable of everlasting life. Now the Ehims also served the yaks in the same way, but they disobeyed the Lord in inflicting the neutral gender on their enemies, whom they captured in war. And although they were themselves half-breeds with the Droogs, yet they hated the Droogs and pursued them with vengeance. In those days, the relative portion of the races of men was Ehuans 100, Ehims 100, Ehuans 300, Droogs 5,000, Yaks 5,000, and monstrosities betwixt man and beast 3,000. But the latter died each generation, for they had not the power of procreation amongst themselves. And the Lord saw the work of destruction going on, and he sent the Ehims to preach among the Ehuans, saying, Say to the Ehuans, whomsoever is created alive, kill not, for it is the commandment of the Lord. For in the time of your most success is slaughtering, For in the time of your most success is slaughtering your fellow man. Ye are also peopling heaven with spirits of vengeance, and they will return upon you, and even the Ehuans shall turn upon one another. But the Ehuans understood not, believed not, and great darkness covered the earth. And all men, save the few Ehims, indulged in wickedness all their mortal life. And the Lord's people worshipped and preached in the temple, and the Lord and his heavenly hosts ministered unto them. But the other races of men would not come to learn of God. And the Lord became tired of his labor, and he called his angels to him and said unto them, Behold, man on earth hath gone so far from my ways that he would not heed my commandments. He cannot hear my voice. And your labor is vain also, for which reason we will tarry no longer on earth till man hath exhausted the evil that is in him. So the Lord and his hosts departed away from the earth, and the clouds came over the face of the earth, and the moon shone not, and the sun was only as a red coal of fire, and the stars stood in a firmament as well in the day as the night. Hold on. Let me just read it over. So the Lord and his host departed away from the earth, and the clouds came over the face of the earth, and the moon shone not, and the sun was only as a red coal of fire, and the stars stood in the firmament as well in the day as at night. The harvest failed, the trees yielded no nuts, and the roots on which man fed ceased to grow, and the monstrosities and the yaks and the droogs died off, tens of millions of them, and even yet they were not extinct. Nevertheless, the Ehuans suffered less, and the Ehims not at all, for the Lord had previously inspired them to provide against the coming famine. And the Lord bewailed the earth and the generations of men. I made man upright and walked by his side, but he slipped aside and fell. I admonished him, but he would not heed. I showed him that every living creature brought forth after its own kind, but he understood not, believed not, and he dwelt with the beasts, falling lower than all the rest. Sound like the God of Genesis, right? But he was God, but not the God, not creator, right? These same woes, this same, I'm mad that I even made you, right? Okay, so that's where we pause at. That was the last chapter in the cycle of Sathantes, which is actually called the Lord's Record for Cycle of Sathantes. Okay, so we pause right there, and let's go ahead and get into Feel God to the spirit world and finish this up today as well. Audrey Shalom, sis, Avia, greetings, and everybody else that came in bit by bit. Okay, Appendix B, exposure to death. Remember, this was the chapter, the portion we read before, but we're going to read it again. Okay, exposure to death is one more neglected factor, especially for the predisposed person. Contact with death and dying may become more risky than we realize. Dr. Edith Fior, one of a handful of American psychiatrists who treat their deranged cases by dislodging the troublesome spirit, has incisively written about 3 places with the greatest concentration of spirits: hospitals, funeral homes, and cemeteries. When drinking follows the funeral services, any spirit who followed the guests home can easily possess them. That's why fights be breaking out at funerals and stuff, and all types of craziness sometimes. It just depends. Some, not all the time, but sometimes, right? Hospitals, quote, children often come down with obsessional disorders after a period of hospitalization, end quote. Levenkron, 1991, page 127. As Fiore explains, quote, doctors, nurses, hospital personnel, paramedics, undertakers, and people who work in cemeteries are all targets for possession. If we could see clairvoyantly, we would probably be shocked at the number of spirits that populate hospitals latching onto people, end quote. Fiore, 1987, page 113. In a near-death condition in a hospital bed, Betty Eady, 1992, pages 126 through 27, felt the presence of several hideous creatures of a clearly malevolent nature that were intent upon attacking her. Hospitals, wrote psychic medium James Van Praagh, 2008, page 143, are a very big draw for ghosts. Whenever I visit people in hospitals, ghosts are always milling around. Some are there to siphon off energy from people in weakened states. Some are ghosts who are nearly dead and somewhat confused as to their whereabouts. Cemeteries. Expert at the removal of troublesome spirits, Reverend Eugene Mooring speaks from experience about cemeteries. Quote, hundreds reside in such places. Hospitals and prisons are also prime targets for an exorcist. A spirit person's trajectory will be governed by his beliefs. A person who had no belief about after death finds that he must shift for himself. Unfortunately, he may remain in the hospital where he died or in the cemetery where his body was interred. He has become earthbound, end quote. And if a patient has been given a general anesthetic for a surgical operation, he may find upon resuming consciousness that he has one or more of these entities on board. Maury, 1988, page 24 and 92. Interestingly, Richard Knoll, 1990, page 37, has found that nursing is a, quote, common occupation among female multiples, end quote. I know I done already went past that point, Jamila. She said kind of sounds like the Anunnaki story too, like when we finish reading the end of this, that book there. It does. It's all, look, they're all derived from the same source. I mean, we know that now, right? Going all the way back to the ancient Sumerian texts, all the different religious books, they all derive from that. They have like bits and pieces of it. Even the Anunnaki Bible, all this other stuff. Some of the stuff in the Anunnaki Bible, people, the most holiest Christians would be appalled at what they find out is in the Anunnaki Bible. What is happening? Hold on, y'all. Stop. Okay. Something happened on my screen. Okay. All right. Yeah, but people would be appalled if you talk to them. If they hear the word, like I was, just as ignorant as I wanted to be. I told y'all about this story about the first time I heard something about the Anunnaki. Well, not the first time, but the first time I had heard a black person talking about the Anunnaki. I was like, Sister clearly lost her mind, right? I was listening to her and I was cracking up laughing because of what she was explaining. I'm like, this is absolutely ridiculous, right? But the more time I put in life and grew, and I studied it a little bit more, I thought back to the day I was laughing at her. I'm like, well, shoot, that girl was telling the truth, but I was completely ignorant. I cracked a few jokes about her. I was like, Father, forgive me, right? She was on to something. She definitely was way smarter than me at that point, right? But it's interesting what we find out when we start looking into some of these other holy and religious books and trace them all back and realize that they all stem from one main source, right? Fritz, shalom, shalom. Bonjour. Just me, shalom. Key, did you get a chance to go back and watch the video from yesterday? You got to jump all the way. If you want to get right to the marriage portion, you got to go, just jump all the way to the end. You're going to miss some of the shenanigans stories at the beginning, especially about the naked frozen cup lady. But let's go back and watch that later. But based on what we chatted about yesterday in the comment section of your post, you got to jump all the way to the end. Probably like if you're looking at it on YouTube, jump to the, matter of fact, I put a marker in it. You could just go to the comment section and click on, I think it was the hour and 16-minute marker, right? Just click on that, jump you right there. And it starts. Okay. A spirit person's trajectory will be governed by his life. A person who had no belief about after death finds he must shift for himself. Unfortunately, he may remain in the hospital where he died or in the cemetery where his body was interred. He has become earthbound. And if a patient has been given a general anesthetic for a surgical operation, he may find upon resuming consciousness that he has one or more of these entities on board. Morey, 1988, page 24 and 92. Interestingly, Richard Knoll, 1990, page 37, has found that nursing is, quote, a common occupation among female multiples, end quote. The ski mask rapist, it turned out, was a one-time hospital cardiovascular technician. Sensitives, especially those who are sensitive and do not know it, can be caught unawares. Graveyards can wreak havoc on the sensitive. The actress Patty Duke, listen, I remember reading this because that was the time we read this part shortly. No, we had been here already for some months. I just brought the story back up about the Gopher House. Right beside the Gopher House, there was a graveyard. Like when we was first looking at the house, that graveyard didn't bother us because my theory, I was like, it ain't the dead we need to worry about. It's the living, right? So I don't mind a graveyard, right? I mean, we went like directly beside the graveyard, but the house was on the corner and there was like this big wooded area. And then it was actually a church on the corner. It was a church. It was the church's graveyard, right? But it wasn't like directly right next door, but it was, right? So it was the house. It was the house on the corner, which we called the Gopher House. The bitter trees that separated the property from the church's property is like a little creek, a little bit of land, the graveyard, and then the church, right? So, but we started reading this, and then things started happening. We was like, it's the perfect house, yes. We got like 6 acres. We was already planning it out. But then we kept going out there, and we was like, Father, if this is not it, just let something happen. Then my husband, the closer we got to signing date, matter of fact, the day we were to sign it, close, y'all remember that? We were still in the hotel. The day we was going to sign, right? No, I'm sorry, not the day we was going to sign. The night before we was going to sign. We went out to the house one last time. And that's when we saw the entire property. Like, how does this happen, right? When I say the entire property, it looked like the Gophers had their annual meeting at that house, hence the name, the Gopher House. When I say every inch of that property in the front yard, and the front yard was huge, right? It was huge. You had to drive back. The house was kind of set, not in the middle of the land, but there was a huge front yard with like the gazebo and a little nice size koi pond on the side. And then all up here in the front, there were gopher holes. And you know, me and tryptophobia, we don't jive like that, right? I will darn near block you if you send me something with a bunch of tiny holes close together. Oh my gosh. Key, that one picture you had posted in the group chat, I'm like, oh my God, why would she post that? And then it was like, I can't unsee it. So I had to close the group chat for a while to make sure that it got way up into the comments where I wouldn't look upon it by mistake again. But anyway, the entire front yard and the entire backyard, even walking back there, because that's the acreage was at the back and everything. When I say they were all over the property, I'm like, how is this even possible? Because it had only been, because we was out there maybe like 4 days prior to that, just out there walking the land again, right? Taking the kids out there. They was like, this your room, the pool. We had all the plans and stuff. Yeah, this is the first thing we're going to get going because it's July. We want to get and enjoy this pool this summer. You know, all that we had like the little trail, the woods and stuff was already kind of cut out with an island. It was already like a tree house back there. I was like, this is amazing. Yes. Closer we got, my husband's like, babe, I don't know. I just feel like, I'm like, listen, you the one that got me on board with this house. I'm all super ready for this. And we planning this out, the bomb cookouts, family gatherings and all this stuff. I was like, you done got me on board with this. I'm super excited. Now you talking about something you don't know about the property. And then not every time, but then I was like, well, is it the graveyard? He said, no, it's not the graveyard, but I feel, I don't really know what I feel, but I don't know that I want this anymore. I'm like, well, darn. And he like real serious about it. But he was saying that. But when I saw the holes all over the entire acreage, I was like, yeah, bro, this ain't it. This ain't it for us. And so we was able to get out of that. We was able to back out of that deal. But the more I think about it, I'm like, the gopher holes was probably, well, that's an indication of a bigger problem. That's like a money pit to be, right? Because, I mean, it ain't like you really going to get rid of them forever because of all the land and stuff. And like, we don't want to be tossing money out to have people come constantly treat the land or trap them and let them lose, whatever, right? Not something we envision ourselves doing, right? But that was just like a surface problem. I think the graveyard may have been the major problem. I say for, not just for me. I'm like, you know what? I am so glad we did not get the gopher house, especially because of the graveyard, right? Listen, make you itch, cheek. Nava Grand Rising, sis. Miss Amazing Wonders. Okay, listen. Sensitives, especially those who are, sensitive, especially those who are sensitive and do not know it, can be caught unawares. Graveyards can wreak havoc on the sensitive. The actress Patty Duke, who bravely shared her brilliant madness with the world, recalled that whenever she passed the local cemetery, she was instantly overtaken with a panic attack. Patty was a sensitive but did not know it. She was prone to dissociative states. Quote, something takes over, end quote. Dramatic mood swings, violent outbursts, suicidal thoughts, quote, demons inside me, end quote, as well as undeveloped mediumship, hearing voices, OBEs, quote, left my body, end quote, obsessions, precognitions, phobias, and manias. What? Yeah. I used to look at that verse, Ecclesiastes 9:5. I used to look at that one type of way until I became a little bit more developed spiritually. It says, for the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything, neither have they any more a reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. And he said, brought this verse to my mind. I think that's true and that's not true in a way, especially about the dead, right? Because you do have those who have become very well developed spiritually, and then they leave and they know exactly where they're going. Hey, so I asked the girls if they're gonna go tomorrow too.
That's something I would like. That's something I would like.
What?
Being a scientist, being up in Antarctica, and then just take a selfie of me in Antarctica. doing research. I want to look that.
Well, do it. Ain't nothing stopping. What was I about to say?
What is this?
Oh yeah. Those who are very well. That was your dad's rice. Well, not anymore. He gave it to Bella. So it's it's Bella's rice. Some are very well spiritually developed, and they may not know exactly, but they have guidance of when they leave. It's those who have not developed so much spiritually that know nothing. All they know is the earthbound stuff, right? They don't even look like, okay, I know I ain't supposed to be sticking around here. Like, they're not even turned in the direction of growth. They're turned facing the earth like, how do I get back in there, right?
Sorry to cut you off. I did not know this.
Okay, go ahead. Either way, son. Dick Sutphin, a sensitive, quote, became hysterical at the edge of an ancient graveyard in Arizona and literally had to be dragged, sobbing, back to his hotel room. For hours afterward, he was delirious, talking about being killed, end quote. Wiseman, 1977, page 45. The input from spirits concerned a massacre that took place 400 years ago when a Spanish priest had issued an order to destroy all the Indians who refused baptism. Mom, shalom. Quote, mental disturbances of all kinds may have their source in intrusions of hostile or parasitic chaos. Let me start it over. Mental disturbances of all kinds may have their source in the intrusions of hostile or parasitic or chaotic entities. Mankind's superstitious dread of night in the graveyard is not as laughable as the cultivated would like to pretend. End quote. Augustine Cahill, Darkness, Dawn, and Density.
There was some extremists back then. I'm not even kidding.
They took it a lot more serious, what we're starting to do now. They realized the dead is not as dead as they thought they were. They're very much alive. Page 264, we're in Appendix B,
but we
y'all.
still out here killing people, though. Makes no sense.
They just populating people that's waiting for them to enact revenge upon them when they step across the threshold.
To be honest, I feel like slave masters probably had it the worst. Because as soon as they died, they was sitting there like, remember us, nigga?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
So don't tarry long among the tombstones if you think you are a sensitive. In Brazil, the spirits of suicide, called Exus, E-X-U-S, quote, spend much of their time in cemeteries, which are regarded as particularly dangerous places for mediums with undeveloped abilities, end quote. Crapazano and Garrison, 1977, page 337. Shebrew, hey girl, hey. We have seen many abused children become psychic. Richard Ramirez is one example. Californians will remember with a chill the reign of the Night Stalker, who took 14 innocent lives in the 1980s, terrorizing the women of LA. There had actually been many signs of dissociation, ACS, and malignant overshadowing in this tall Tex-Mex guy. Hyperactive disorder, fantasies, early epilepsy, sleep disorder, staring spells, and blackouts. It didn't help that Richard had been forced to witness a wife murder. Richard developed something of a dual personality as well as suicidal tendencies. He also exhibited certain cardinal signs of possession, corporelia, and hyperpraxia. While still living at home, this excellent candidate for negative overshadowing would take to sleeping in the Cordova Cemetery, El Paso, to get away from his father's rages. He'd grab his sleeping bag and run. Quote, the boys slept in the cemetery frequently, end quote. Did Richard pick up exes or demons or wandering spirits of darkness at the Cordova Cemetery? Peter Sutcliffe His opposite number in England almost certainly became obsessed at the Bingley Cemetery. The Yorkshire Ripper, whose identity spurred his country's largest manhunt to date, 1981, had taken a job as a grave digger at Bingley Cemetery in his teens and later worked at the town morgue. Ultimately, convicted of 13 counts of stranger murder, he had a close encounter at the graveyard. Peter heard a voice that led him to a particular grave. The voice now emanated from the headstone. It was just the beginning. With the passage of time, the voice began inciting him to violence, telling him that prostitutes who would become his victims were the cause of society's problems. From that point on, Peter was, quote, compelled to kill, end quote. Byrne, 1985, pages 38, 242, and 246. Across the Atlantic in New York, David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, had a fascination with cemeteries, especially after his mother's death. Quote, I just used to have the urge to go, just hang around, talk. I used to visit all the graves there. I would, talk. I felt akin to them, end quote. David's rapport with the dead is curiously reminiscent of Jim Huberty's confession that he was, quote, more comfortable with the dead than the living, end quote. Douglas and Olshaker, 1999, page 231. Huberty was the man who, in 1984, shot up a McDonald's in San Isidro, California, killing 21 innocent persons. Sheesh. Jim had attended mortuary school and worked for 2 years at a funeral home. Prince, what's going on, brother? What you say, Jeremiah?
Why do they say persons and not people?
I don't know.
They can't be so forward with talking, makes them sound like idiots.
It's just the way we do it in the English language, right? He said, why do they say persons and not people? I don't know. I don't know that I want to get into the English lesson.
It is like,
I mean, you can see it either way. Technically.
Person is like this. That person compared to those people. We're talking about more of a plural.
Right.
Person is a singular.
Right.
It makes me go, bro. It drives me crazy every time people say.
I mean, persons is
or
the
I see it
same
in a
thing
book.
as people. Persons or people. People is just plural without the S. Persons is plural with the
That's
S.
the thing. Persons wasn't a word,
Take this up with Susan.
bro.
Susie, you hear my son? Listen. In nearby Las Vegas, John Wayne Gacy, at age 21, also found work as an ambulance driver for Palm Mortuary and was later assigned to the mortuary itself as an attendant. Here, he morbidly took to sleeping in the embalming room. Quote, about that time, Dr. Rappaport would later note he was definitely borderline, end quote. I think right here, this was where I remember, it's not funny. It's really not funny. Let me tell you something. When you go to work, be diligent about not screwing off your time while you at work, right? Get good sleep before you go to work, especially if you work in the graveyard shift. We just call it the graveyard shift. If you're working in the evening time. There was a gentleman, oh my gosh. I don't even know what would drive a person to do this, but it was on the news. Y'all can go look it up. This happened maybe like 3 years ago. BC, what's good? Shogun of Harlem. What's going on? Listen, maybe a little more than 3 years ago, right? But it was a dude that worked at was it a mortuary or a funeral parlor, a place where they do cremations, right? And so he decided on his break that he would go take a nap. And he decided to take a nap. Like, bruh, you can like go out to your car and like go to sleep. Maybe find some corner to duck off in. Why would you go in a room where they burn the bodies where they burn the bodies, and get into the box right beside the hot burner. Why are you gonna choose that box to get in and take your 15-minute nap? Apparently, right? Apparently, the other person on duty in the mortuary, whatever you call it, the one that burned the bodies, apparently, they don't do last-minute checks. Check in the box. It's already on the wheels that you're taking. Slide right in. Just open the door. Slide the box right. We just gonna line it up. Just pull it up a little bit. Jack it up. Open this up. Okay. Just slide it right in. Jacked it on up. Slid it right on in there. Without checking it. Like, if I worked there, I would, like, last-minute checks, or if it's not like sealed already. Now, we cremated my father, right? So they put him in this cardboard box, and they, like, it ain't locked or anything. Like, you just do last-minute check. That should be protocol. Last-minute check. Okay, bro, it's still just you. Right? Last-minute check. Why would you? It wasn't a body in there. Hold on. Was it a body in there? Because that would make it really more creepy. I think it was an empty box, right? I think it was an empty box. There are so many questions I got about this story. I really do. I don't know if the guy that was on duty is in jail, but there's just so many questions, right? He got into the box, so this is just an outright case of murder altogether. But this person was he was a part of his murder. At least this is the story they tell us, because they could have gotten into something. Well, there was no evidence of a fight or anything around there, so maybe he did ignorantly. You can't even like, it's an ignorant act, but you, like, on purpose opened up the box and got into it right beside the burning flames. Like,
sometimes I be giving humankind, like, I be giving mankind the benefit of the doubt sometimes, but then they just find a way to mess it up somehow.
They always find a way to just prove you wrong. Jeremiah said, you know what? I give mankind the benefit of the doubt sometimes. Listen, seriously, y'all, I'm gonna find it. Hold on. Y'all have to look at this. This story, I have so many questions still about this. But anyway, the story is that and how do they know that's the real story for real? Because the person still left alive said, he went in there to take a nap or something. How can we even really believe that? But that's the story they was pushing. He got into the box to take a nap, right? And they didn't check it. I think that's total garbage, but that's the story that's being shared. Like, how can we prove that? You done burnt the man up. Right, there's nothing left but cardboard ashes and ashes from his fleshly body. Right.
I hope it was painless, but we all know that.
I don't know. I don't know if you can call that a suicide, maybe involuntary suicide. I don't know. Maybe it was a dead body. Maybe it could have been a suicide, right? Because maybe it was a dead body in there. Maybe he was just like, you know what? Nothing's worth it anymore. Maybe he scrunched himself down towards the foot of the dead body, and maybe they did do a check, right? But they just, okay, close it, right? But just make sure it was a body in there, or the head or the feet. They verified that was still there, but they didn't check the other end. And they just pushed it right on in the fire. And so now Tommy's missing from third shift. Where's Tommy? Well, we got the cameras. There's a portion of the mortuary where, we don't get really a good view, but we saw him come in. Like, we have cameras on all the doors and windows. We saw him come in for his shift. We never saw him leave out, right? So now we're looking for Tommy on the graveyard shift. Tommy has transitioned over into the netherworld.
He's just standing there looking at y'all like...
Standing there like, bruh, this did not go as planned. Like, why am I still here? Now you're still here without a body to anchor you, and now you just attached yourself.
Looking stuck.
Right. What you thought you was getting away from, you just cemented yourself in with nobody that can hear you, right? And that's crazy. You should be. People that take these positions, they should really be spiritual and understand what's happening there.
Somebody can hear him. he's gonna hope it's the right one that's gonna hear him if he starts shouting.
Right, yeah, you know, so, man, it's crazy. Yeah, so, maybe he did. A cardboard can't be comfortable. I don't think it is. Thinking about the cardboard box they put my daddy in and stuff, boy, was so many shenanigans in that funeral home that day when we went to go view his body in that cardboard box.
You want to try to jump in the box?
No, absolutely not. That was the day my siblings decided we were going to get Dad one last kiss on the forehead. I'm just like, I can't be party to this.
I'm sorry to say, I love y'all, y'all my parents, but I would never. I'm sorry. Me, my little touchy young cold head, I was screaming.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I got so... I ain't gonna say so many stories, but I got shenaniganizing story about my daddy and my grandma.
I'm pretty sure y'all know
when they died. Okay, Jeremiah, quit sidetracking me. I've got to finish this today now. Look, I will be haunting everyone that come in here and do. They all do. Look, okay, look. Let me finish this, y'all. Where we at? 42 minutes. Okay. Hold on. In nearby Las Vegas, John Wayne Gacy, at age 20, also found work as an ambulance driver for Palm Mortuary and was later assigned to the mortuary itself as an attendant. Here, he morbidly took to sleeping in the embalming room. Quote, about that time, Dr. Rappaport would later note, he was definitely borderline. Another forensic psychiatrist on the case, Dr. Freeman, pressed Gacy for further details of his job in Las Vegas. Excuse me. Bodies, he noted, were, quote, all around, dead things, a silver gray coffin with white interior open. John got inside with the body. See, people, they do this. Maybe he did that, right? Maybe he shenaniganized.
Come on, look. Stop trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was stupid. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, he probably was, because I just can't see that either the stories, either that's a case of murder or maybe he really did. I don't know. But nobody really knows that for real. And see, listen, how would they even know, right? How would they even know that he did that? We just can't find Tom. We don't know. Maybe there was a glitch in the system or something. But how do they know? How do they know? Maybe it's more ashes than most. Maybe it's double the ashes. Maybe it was double the ashes, right? Because how would they would have known for real that Tom got in the box? Tom is not his real name. You gotta look up the story.
Another body in the box.
Say it again.
He got in the box when there was already a body in the box.
Possibly. This story. I don't know. We got to use this as a case study. I'm gonna get it. No, I can't, because we starting tomorrow. I'm gonna just pull it up. Y'all read it on your own time. I was about to say, we got to do a case study. Let's talk about this. It's all off. I have so many questions about this. Global purpose, shalom, shalom. Bronze. And look, and they do. That's disgusting, right? Whether they still got their body or don't, right? But I guess if they don't have their body anymore, it's really just an exchange of energy. Because, I haven't... Okay, I can't say I haven't... Okay, don't think I'm crazy. Listen, I was about to say, okay, Bronze Joe said he probably knocking boots with the corpses, right? Oh, that's a good point, Ma. She said maybe they heard him screaming when the heat hit. Possibly. I got to pull the story back up. That could be true. Maybe they figured out Tom then got into the box somehow. Maybe. I'll pull the story back up. Look. But it is a thing, right? He probably not. Wait, hold on. Let me just make sure I'm clear on what you said. You talking about the already disembodied person having sexual relations? No, wait, hold on, because you said with the corpses. Wait, is you talking about like the mortician or the spirit having intercourse with the dead body? Let me just be clear on what you just said there. Hold on. And they couldn't reverse the roller? Yeah. Once you go in, ain't no coming out. Maybe they couldn't because it was so hot, right? Maybe it doesn't open until it could be. I don't know how it works. Maybe it doesn't open until after the cycle of fire has gotten to the cooling stage, and then they just go in there like a pizza scooping the pizza out of the brick oven.
I'm gonna be honest.
And they
Why
got
do
a
we do
funnel,
all
maybe.
that?
Maybe they got a funnel that they dump the ashes in.
Oh no, they
get
just
it.
shovel them niggas out. I'm being so
get it?
serious. Yeah, they just
'Cause
shovel them
they-
niggas out like
they-
pizza. Yeah, they just take them out.
I don't know.
Like, well, that and also they have a tray.
How you know?
When you're curious about a lot of stuff, nothing is. There's just no limit. They literally have a tray. They put the box on the tray. They put you in the cremator. Yeah, take you out on that tray. You would just all types of ash, burnt. Sometimes your bones will stay. If they got some nice high end one, your bones are gone too.
Oh.
They just come out hot red.
Oh. So how does it cool? They just leave
Air
it
it
open?
out.
And risk a breeze? And ashes floating through the place?
The room is still. Sometimes they'll leave it in there and let it vent out, or they'll just take it out. Some niggas don't care.
That is unsanitary, at least in my thinking. I'm not an expert in this, but I'm just saying, right, on a roller to ensure the body is completely ashes. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, okay. The mortician, believe it or not, absolutely disgusting. There are people that do that, right?
What?
They got a place special waiting for them. This is a comment he made.
Question: why don't you just bury each other under trees? Wouldn't that be better? Like, the body don't even belong to us. Just throw this thing back to where it came from.
Yeah, I mean, there should be a certain respectful ceremony.
If y'all can't send me off on a wooden boat and put me on fire when I die,
they super nasty, Shogun.
if y'all can't do that, I want to be buried in a tree.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, let me finish reading this, y'all. We got like 11 minutes. Okay. Okay. Hold on. Dr. Freeman pressed. Another forensic psychiatrist on the case, Dr. Freeman, pressed Gacy for further details of his job in Las Vegas. Bodies, he noted, were, quote, all around. Dead things. A silver gray coffin with white interior, open. John got inside with the body. He wanted to feel death in the darkness, end quote. T. Call Hill, 1987, page 309, page 323, page 44 and 46. No surprise, our rogues gallery has a statistically significant number of death workers. Ken Bianchi worked 2 years as an ambulance driver. Mark Hoffman's father was a mortician.
It's regular.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No.
Huh?
So you're telling me it's on a regular niggas just be going to sleep in these box trees and they get.
I wouldn't say on a regular. I would hope not.
That's the case, then y'all most sleep knocked out.
I don't know. Well, shoot. You would think that's common sense, but when you become overshadowed, right? I agree with that. Common sense is not so common with all people. I mean, you can't call it that because that's something like people in other places may commonly run into. It's like a common scenario, but in other places they don't commonly run into these type of issues, so that wouldn't be common sense for them. It's common sense for us, but not common sense for them. But there's a certain level of common sense I think that is innately inside your spirit when you're born.
Oh yeah. Some things just don't make sense, and just morally, come on now.
Yeah.
Come on, really.
Okay.
Really?
No surprise. Hold on. Maybe I went up too far. No, I'll read it again. No surprise, our rogues gallery has a statistically significant number of death workers. Ken Bianchi worked 2 years as an ambulance driver. Mark Hoffman's father was a mortician. Profiling Jack the Ripper as an unsub. He was never caught. Douglas and O'Shaker, 2000, page 69, imagined that he might have been, quote, a mortician's helper, hospital, or morgue attendant, end quote. Charles Davis, rapist and killer of 5, was an ambulance driver with a unique approach to murder. He'd kill the woman and then arrange things in such a way that he himself would be assigned to pick up the body. This has got to be a small little town to be able to coordinate these details.
This nigga was trying to make himself some money.
Some money?
Mm-hmm. What you mean?
I mean...
Hey, there's no jobs around. Sorry, guys.
I mean,
right,
I guess that is a...
Homie trying to get to the bag. I don't knock it, but I knock it. But it's like, you could have found a better way of this, but I mean, hey man, do what you gotta do, homie. I mean, hey.
Let me read this again. Hold on. Charles Davis, rapist and killer of 5, was an ambulance driver with a unique approach to murder. He'd kill the woman and then arrange things in such a way that he himself would be assigned to pick up the body. Rod Farrell, double homicide of girlfriend's parents. That's a good point, Bronze. Plus, they didn't have the forensics or cameras back then. I bet folks was getting away with everything. Yeah, that's a big part of it, too.
Tax evasion.
A lot of stuff. Look, okay. Rod Farrell, double homicide of girlfriend's parents while still in high school, was recruiting friends and classmates into his little vampire coven. Many of the rites and ceremonies performed at the local cemetery. Far from the desultory effects on Agassiz or Berkowitz or Bianchi, Rod and his followers were actively seeking, quote, the embrace, end quote, of spirits, quote, readily accessible as the coffins were above ground, end quote, at Majestic St. Louis Cemetery in Kentucky.
I gotta pick up a small bread.
You got who?
Pick up more bread.
Okay. Quote, I'm not mortal, end quote, Rod F. Aware of otherworldly beings, but in the most sinister way, Rod wanted, quote, to have other vampires join me so I can teach them of the world beyond, end quote. According to his twisted logic, the greatest benefits would accrue from invoking the, quote, horned one, end quote, and, quote, messengers of the gods of prey, end quote. How successful he was. The coven indeed, quote, began to make contacts in the spirit world. And Rod, entranced, spoke of angels falling from the sky and different killings, end quote. Members began experiencing markedly paranormal states, absorbing spirit powers, producing automatic writing, communing with and joining souls that have walked the earth for thousands of years, going on OBEs and undergoing ACSs. OBE is out-of-body experiences. ACS is altered states of consciousness. Hold on.
He's that one friend he's that one kid that had an imaginary friend and his parents said, oh, it's just a phase, and just didn't at all to think it was like, oh yeah, we don't have no imaginary. See, if my child has an imaginary friend, I'm gonna nip that right in the bud right then and there. Because if I see something in the house move by itself that is not supposed to move, my brain is gonna try to make logic of it. It's not gonna make sense. Because ain't no breeze gonna knock over a cup that was filled with water. It don't work like that. So no.
When you were saying that, remind me of the day Bella was in her room and her thing fell by itself that shouldn't have fell because it was positioned right in the middle of her dollhouse. That girl took off, flying out her room, came
good senses
round the corner, turned into her room. I'm like, girl, she said, something in my room moved. And she explained what happened. I said, show me. She said, no, you go look. And she's 6. Look, it's not funny, but it's funny, but it's not funny. Look, hold on. We so scary sometimes. Dang, look. Hold on. Members began experiencing Hold on. Just think about that baby that was around. I'm sorry. Hold on. Elijah, peace and blessings. It relates a lot because, hold on, it relates a lot to feel God, to the spirit realm to me. Hold on. Oh, Mind Hunter. You talking about Mind Hunter on Netflix, based in the 70s. You know I got to go check it out. Okay, Mind Hunter.
Man, I'm just waiting for Project Bluebeam to go on. Still living my life, but Project Bluebeam to hurry up. I need. Ooh.
Look, don't get me sidetracked, Jeremiah. Look, okay, hold on, we almost done.
Oh no, last thing. I'm calling ATI back.
Call who?
ATI back.
You saying you calling back, or you want me to call?
I'm gonna call back because I'm over here thinking to myself, I'm not gonna get.
Can this wait till afterwards?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Dang. Members began experiencing monthly paranormal states, absorbing spirit powers, producing automatic writing, communing with and joining souls, quote, that have walked the earth for thousands of years, end quote, going on OBEs and undergoing ASCs. Jones, hold on, that was the end of the sentence. Going on OBEs and undergoing ASCs. Jones, 1999, page 17, 22, 26, 56, and 59. And this is the last paragraph in Appendix B. Strange to say, Rod, product of a horrendous family life, attained a kind of, shall we say, anti-enlightenment, a kind of perverse wisdom. His damaged psyche could only call in malign beings, or the most evil beings. Almost poignant is the way this dark soul named the cemetery where his vampire cohorts convened. He called it the birthplace. Indeed, one would have to be virtually reborn to overcome the terrors of a childhood like his, filled with abuse, neglect, ignorance, hypocrisy, and shame. End quote. No, not end quote. That's the end of the sentence. Okay, that's fine.
The kids get sweet babies.
All right, so last Appendix C, we at like the 59-minute mark. I do have to go somewhere, but I'm gonna go ahead and read this, because there's not like a time period. So I'm gonna go ahead and read this so we can go ahead and finish this today. But if y'all have to leave and go to work, go ahead and get up out of here, right? Don't be late to the man's establishment. But if you're not the man, some of y'all, the man, you run your own stuff, and that's no slight against you. Seriously, I just want you to be on time, right? Appendix C, trauma. The trail we are following starts with a traumatic event so overwhelming as to send psyche reeling, catapulted into the intangible, the next zone of existence, referred to variously as the threshold, the void, the second state, elsewhere, and so on. Although we have legal beagles who disdain the, quote, abuse excuse, end quote, the stark reality remains. Our multiples and our most serious sociopaths were almost all victims of early trauma. The fact that many serial killers suffered severe head trauma has never been properly factored in. It is, however, not brain damage per se, but precarious states of consciousness, in a word, psyche exteriorized. Many of us have heard of the formula fight or flight, which portrays the survival instinct at work when faced with a mortal threat. If the menace cannot be confronted or fought off, the only alternative is escape, flight, and it is no different for psyche when faced with terror, shock, or pain. The mind naturally seeks escape from life's bombshells. A sudden insult to the organism triggers the flight response, absenting from self. Isn't this what causes the shell of a person, this, quote, garage without a car, end quote? Something in his or her experience, something traumatic, has occasioned the disconnect, the flight from self, which the psychologies is known blandly as dissociation, shock, injury, grave illness, surgery under anesthetics, pure terror, and unconsciousness all represent the lowest possible state of human vitality, and it is in this state that the mind is rendered utterly defenseless, hence unable to resist, quote, the intrusion of a strong spirit personality. And this is why I do not agree with people scaring children. They do it as pranks. We see a lot of it on social media today, putting on masks, hopping from behind bushes, scaring little innocent babies that's out there playing just for a rise and views and stuff. They don't realize the damage they're doing, especially if they're nefarious spirits hanging around. Because as soon as you scare that child don't know it's a joke. They literally, what happens to them, it opens their aura. It opens their aura. The fear is a door. It opens the door for nefarious spirits to get in. Like, just that quick. Right? So y'all, I ain't saying y'all, but if somebody done scroll past this and hear me talking about it, and you a prankster, stop scaring. Stop scaring people, period. Just stop it. Leave it to the movies and stuff, right? You can do little pranks, but don't do things that's going to cause people possibly to have a heart attack or run off in fear and hurt themselves and all of those things. Those things are dangerous. They're really dangerous on multiple levels, right? And spiritually being the most dangerous, because most of the time you will not be able to pinpoint the shift in their life and how it sends them on a completely different trajectory. Hold on. Let me read that again. Shock, injury, grave illness, surgery under anesthetics, pure terror, and unconsciousness all represent, hold on, I need some water, hold on. I left my bottle upstairs. You know, just grab a glass anyway. Hold on, I just gotta clean it up first. Okay, just sip. Tabitha. I don't play pranks on no one. L. Stewart, Grand Rising. Donnie, many blessings. Okay. Shock, injury, grave illness, surgery under anesthetics, pure terror, and unconsciousness all represent the lowest possible state of human vitality, and it is in this state that the mind is rendered utterly defenseless, hence unable to resist, quote, the intrusions of a strong spirit personality. This is involuntary possession, end quote. Maury, 1988, page 76. It is equally compelling to discover how many top-flight mediums began their psychic career in accidents, injury, or illness. Sylvan J. Muldoon, Vincent N. Turvey, and Oliver Fox. Okay. Sylvan J. Muldoon, Vincent N. Turvey, and Oliver Fox are well-known sensitives of the early 20th century, quote, had their psychic faculties intensified by long periods of illness, end quote. Battersby, 1979, page 10.
Thank you again.
You're welcome. Sylvan Muldoon, in a sleigh accident, was thrown out on his head. He promptly left his body and saw himself lying motionless by the side of the road. Ena Twigg, suspended above her body, was likewise aware of herself lying below doing a surgery under anesthetic. Dr. Girdham has shown that psychism is more likely to occur, quote, after long debilitating illnesses such as typhoid and cholera, end quote. 1982, page 53. It was known, for example, that Nettie Maynard had suffered both fragile health and protracted illnesses since childhood. Having tempted death, she lay ill with typhus fever at age 8. She was, in hindsight, but one of countless mediums and seers who had survived serious childhood illnesses only by some miracle. Hold on. I'm reading too fast. Oh, okay. She was, in hindsight, but one of countless mediums and seers who had survived serious childhood illness only by some miracle. D.D. Home, Laurency Venom, Eileen Garrett, Rev. Stanton Moses. As for the last, the great British seer William Stanton Moses, who would pass into spirit the same year as Mrs. Maynard in 1892, he was once told by his controls that, quote, the tempering effect of a bodily illness has been in all your life an engine of great power within us, end quote. We also learned that Mrs. Piper's psychic powers were strongest during times of poor health. During the period of an ovarian tumor, her readings were most accurate. Her spirit operator would fade away when her health returned. Unfortunately, these seers, Piper, Muldoon, Home, Garrett, Moses, and Maynard, are in the minority, having turned their weakness for spirit into an asset, the gift. Most others afflicted in childhood become the hapless victims of obsession, possession, multiple personality disorder, and other, quote, disorders, end quote. Billy Milligan, MPD, raped by his stepfather. Sybil, the famous multiple, sexually tormented by her mother. Jersey, possessed, molested by her father, and so on. The pattern remains consistent as we shift focus to obsessive compulsive disorder. Dr. Rappaport supplies many examples from among her OC patients. Jacob had collapsed at age 8 of a bleeding cerebral aneurysm and fell into a coma. The obsessed boy Zach, also studied by Rappaport, 1989, page 45, underwent 7 operations for congenital intestinal problems, which Rappaport, oddly enough, mistakenly characterized as, quote, unrelated to his OCD, end quote. Although any one of these illnesses, shocks, or blows might thrust psyche toward no man's land, head trauma is by far the leading cause of troubles. Nothing can disrupt or disorient personality more than concussion. The head, after all, was long considered the seat of the soul. In the heyday of spirit circles, sitters were told by their controls that they, the invisible operators on the other side, act as the brains of the sitters to accomplish the phenomena in the seance room. One PSI researcher put it plainly in the chapter titled, quote, How to Become a Psychic by Falling on Your Head, end quote. His examples include Edgar Casey, His examples included Edgar Casey, the famous sleeping prophet who, as a child, was knocked out by a baseball. There was also the well-known Dutch psychic Peter Herkos, who fell off a 40-foot ladder, suffering damage to the brainstem. He woke up in a hospital, a mind reader. After the accident, Peter's parents said he was now, quote, someone else. In a similar case, C.E. was possessed by a dead Austrian artist. He, C.E., had earlier been hospitalized with a serious head injury. Hold on, y'all. I got to really clear my throat. All right. In a similar case, C.E. was possessed by a dead Austrian artist. He, C.E., had earlier been hospitalized with a serious head injury. One of the earliest and best documented cases of, quote, secondary personality, end quote, was that of Doris Fisher. Doris, in fact, was multiple, MPD. The first author had come on board when Doris was only 3. Her drunken father had thrown her down so violently that her head was injured. Another personality emerged when she was 18 after she suffered an injury to her head and back. Head trauma and crime. Head trauma and crime. Case histories are brimming with inappropriate, bizarre, or violent behaviors that were forerun by head trauma. Yet authorities, meaning jurisprudence, are not eager for these facts to emerge, fearing that extenuating circumstances behind criminal acts would weaken the hand of persecution. But the fact remains, some of the most vicious and inexplicable crimes have been committed by individuals with a history of grievous head injury. Of course, law enforcement and their hired guns, paid psychiatrists, have found a way around this. The causal relationship between the trauma and the deviant behavior has never been proven. True enough, but the raw statistics of the matter could hardly be coincidental. See facing page table C1. We're going to read this table in a second. I'm going to just finish reading these two little small paragraphs and we're going to be done with this all together. And this give an example of the different people, their offense, the trauma, and the paranormal behavior. So hold on a second. Among criminal offenders, a propensity for altered states due to head trauma still goes unrecognized, and this for legal, not psychiatric reasons, namely to avoid risking a stronger defense that could put a truly dangerous individual back on the streets. And it don't matter for real. Well, it does matter. The spirit will just, if it can, it'll release itself and just hop onto another body, and the same pattern of murder or killing or whatever malicious activity is going on, it will carry on, right? Even if you send that person to the death chamber, right? At death, the spirit releases. It releases the native spirit and the overshadowing spirit, and they just wait for the next available host, right? Whose aura is opened up unawares. Among criminal offenders, a propensity for altered states due to head trauma still goes unrecognized, and this for legal, not psychiatric reasons, namely to avoid risking a stronger defense that could put a truly dangerous person back on the streets. Nevertheless, our growing corpus of criminal biographies shows an inordinate amount of head trauma. No, this is not any sort of, quote, abuse excuse, end quote, nor rationalization, and certainly not a means to get dangerous offenders off the hook, but only to comprehend the underpinnings of inexplicable, senseless, random acts of violence. There is so much that remains to be explored. If the law weren't so shy of finding mitigating circumstances, sometimes as obscure as scuba diving, Zodiac serial killer, had brain damage, tissue damage from lack of oxygen at birth and or from scuba diving too long. Dean Coral, serial killer, also took up scuba diving, but he had to quit when he nearly fainted. He had also suffered from rheumatic fever and heart murmur. Chris Longo, familicide, was also a scuba diver. Yet the question remains, was it brain damage per se that set off homicidal behavior, or did that compromised mind become susceptible to controlling spirits? I think so, especially in light of the fact that these victims of concussion or of brain damage go on to exhibit a great range of paranormal behavior manifestations in the domain of PSI. A mere sampling is shown in table C1. And so we're going to read this chart, and then we are literally done with this book today. Intuitive Goat, shalom, shalom. My son had a bad head injury, had a bad car accident. Is this the same son that we were talking about yesterday? Intuitive Goat, I'm going to wait for your answer. That's a big key to what's going on now, sis. Yo, those are little clues. That's amazing breakthrough. Yo, that's amazing. I mean, that's not amazing what happened. But it's amazing that we can recognize it, what happened. So his state that he's in now, definitely probably happened during that time, right? Something happened spiritually that shift. You said he had a bad head injury. Yo, isn't the Father amazing? Isn't the Father amazing? Yo. Okay, super excited about that. Help along the way, right? Yo. All right, so let me just finish reading this. But that's great. That's great. We're putting pieces together to help your son get free. And, you know, this is great. This is great. Okay. Table CI, page 271. Let me not get sidetracked. Let me read this chart. Okay, so up here, you see the chart. And it's not really getting sidetracked, but I was on, it's another head injury story, which, this, the person that I mentioned yesterday, was yesterday when we were talking about the 23-year-olds or different family members that's like, look, something wrong, but we can't help them. They gotta want to be free. With this particular person that I was talking about, who was also 23, also has, I ain't gonna say a history of head trauma, but was involved with a man that beat her and hit her in the head, right? So it's a trigger. I mean, it was probably the trigger. I'm almost certain, now that I think about it, reading this, I'm almost certain that's what happened, because the whole shift in the way she acts, it's like one moment she's here and then she flips out, and then it's like another whole ancient entity speaking through her. It's weird. But that change happened in the course of this relationship with this person, right? She's no longer in danger because this person has since entered into the netherworld. We'll just say into the netherworld. But that's where it happened. That's where it began to happen. And then it makes me wonder if that same spirit of the person who was doing it while he was still alive, who was doing it while he was still alive, is indeed the spirit that's overshadowing her now. That's interesting. I just thought about that. Couldn't. I don't. Maybe one of them, because it's a most ancient spirit. One of them, anyway. I don't know. I'm just thinking about this. Tabitha said, "You were on my mind the whole time yesterday, seeing my family had the same problem like you." Into the goat, right? Yeah, she was saying, talking to Deshaun. Okay, yeah, this is okay. Let me finish this chart. I had to think about this. But yeah, that's great. Creator is absolutely amazing. You got pieces of the puzzle now to help set family members free. But they still, I said best case scenario, they still have to want to be free. They have to be made aware of what's happened. I think best case scenario, right? We could do something that I think releases them in some type of way to give them moments of clarity to kind of grasp back onto reality, to where they can be more proactive in their own deliverance, all the way fully 100. But it's interesting. Let me read this chart, y'all. Okay. In the chart, it has the name, the offense, the trauma, and then the paranormal behavior. Whew. Yes. Make sure you stay safe, sis. You know, yeah, because you just gotta make sure you stay safe. Use some wisdom, you know. Okay, yeah, you have to call authority. Sometimes we don't want to, but we absolutely have to, because that could turn bad in so many ways, right? And none of us would ever think let's not even talk about it. But bless the Creator, you were able to get intervention, even in the form of the police. Sometimes you have to do that, right? Stay safe, keep you safe, keep them safe until he can be helped and he can be, Okay. So the first person is Otis Toole. His offense, serial murderer, accomplice of Henry Lee Lucas in recreational killing. The trauma, hit hard in the head with a rock. Paranormal behavior, seizures, commune with dead mother, voices urging suicide. The next person is Henry Lee Lucas. The offense, matricide and serial killer, rape, mutilation. The trauma, assaulted head with board by mother, unconscious, 3 days. The paranormal behavior, dizzy spells, blackouts, floating air, at mercy of various forces. The next person, Dennis Sweeney, killed New York Representative Allard Lowenstein in 1980. The trauma, 1 year after head injury, pump jack accident. Paranormal behavior, voices tormenting him. Next person, Todd Hill. Offense, arson resulting in 8 deaths. Trauma, lobotomized at 14 after skateboard accident. In coma 6 weeks. The paranormal behavior, fuse, doesn't think he did it. Blackout. Next person is Richard Chase. Vampire killer of Sacramento. 6 victims. Trauma, beaten by a gang, head pains. Paranormal behavior, spoke with invisible people, zombie, motivated by subhuman forces, Markman and Bosco, 1989, page 192. Next person is John Wayne Gacy. Offense, killer of 33. Trauma, multiple head traumas. Paranormal behavior, fainting, blackout, automatisms, alter personality, paranormal strength. Next person, Arthur Shawcross. Offense, serial killer, 11 victims. The trauma, multiple traumas to the head, unconscious. Paranormal behavior, OBEs, voices, precognition, paranormal strength, hyperesthesia, alter, fuse. Next person, Danny Starrett. Offense, he was a serial rapist. The trauma, several head injuries, blackouts. Paranormal behavior, him, quote, I feel a presence, another to obey, end quote. Lost time and automatic drawing. Next person is Gary Hindnick. Offense, bondage killer. Trauma, serious head injury in grade school. Paranormal behavior, dizziness, hallucination, quote, divine messages, end quote. Joe Callinger, killer, beaten on the head with a hammer. Night terrors, ESP, clairvoyant. Ken Bianchi, hillside strangler, falls on head, sees altar and demons, lost time. Peter Sutcliffe, Yorkshire Ripper, several blows to the head and accidents, hallucinations, trances, mind reading, hearing voices of God. Richard Ramirez, Night Stalker, 2 childhood accidents, concussion and unconsciousness, visions, apparitions, dual personality. The next person, Bobby Joe Long. His offense, rapist and serial killer. His trauma, twice hit by car. Paranormal behavior, OBEs and visions. And the last person on this chart, Richard Speck, killed 8 nurses. His trauma, many head injuries. The paranormal behavior that followed, blackouts, lost time, and dissociative episodes. And that, my beautiful people, is the end of this absolutely wonderful spiritual guide that everybody needs to have. Like, this should be a part of your spiritual curriculum very early on. From the time you can read, from the time you can read and understand some things, you need to be prepped in spiritual things and people you encounter and what's around you. But anyway, Susan, everybody give Susan a round of applause. Standing ovation. Susan, sis, thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for this. So that is it for today, beautiful people. Even though we stopped reading this, don't just put it on your shelf and let it gather dust, but refer to it from time to time. Let it be your trusty, handy dandy teacher. I was trying to think of something. But refer to it often. Remember, it's on Kindle. It's on Audible, so you can listen to it if you don't have time to actually just sit there and go through it. It's a lot of times when I'm sitting working at the computer, whatever, I'll put in a book or something. But things like this, I like to just put in there because I know we read through it one time and we probably won't read through it again together. But sometimes when you, and I've read it this one time with y'all all the way through, but I've listened to it twice. Right. So, but each time I listen to it, I get a deeper understanding of something else that I didn't catch the first couple times. Absolutely. So amazing. The best spiritual guide that I've had in written form like ever up until this point in my life. This is the best thing. This has caused so many levels of growth for me and understanding some things spiritually that I've been for years searching, trying to figure out while I was in the church, right? She makes it. She's an awesome teacher. Susan, just another round of applause for Susan. Sis, I love your work. I love how you share what you learn and how you're able to put it all together. The Father, thank you for the gift of our sister, Susan B. Martinez. And this is not her only book. She has other ones, clearly, I got her entire library, right? Check her out. Invest. I say invest in yourself. I ain't gonna say invest in her because by default, when you get it, you're gonna invest in her. But by getting this, you're gonna invest in your own spiritual understanding and knowledge. And it's so good, right? I know ain't none of y'all gonna do it. But I say don't bootleg her stuff. Buy the stuff. Get sis her money for what she asking for this. Purchase her stuff, right? All right, beautiful people. That is it for today. Tomorrow we start. I'm super excited. The Essenes Gospel. Look, I ain't been this excited since my full-blown church-going days with reading a book that got the name Jesus in it, right? I know I done talked a lot of crap, right, in my paths of growth, but the wisdom that I find in that is absolutely amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Love you too, sis. All right, so we're gonna get into that tomorrow, y'all. It's amazing. They actually have it. If you don't have a physical copy of it, there's somebody who's written. You'll find a couple different versions, but there's a really, really clear audible version on YouTube. And I'll reshare it today just in case you don't have it. But also you can find it online too. So it's free, just a couple different versions of it, or you can just go Google it and it'll pop up. But if you want to actually have it so you can read it along while I'm reading it out loud, it's there. All right, y'all. It is Wednesday, February the 15th, 2023, day 334 of year 4 of reading through books, laws, and prophets. We finished reading today the entire cycle of Cervantes, but here in Romance of the Red Star, it was called, I keep forgetting the name, y'all. Lord's Record for the Cycle of Cervantes. That's what it's called. We finished reading that last chapter there. We're going to start in the book of Ashong tomorrow. Or they call it here, Cycle of Ashong. And then today we finished reading the rest of Field Guide to the... I'm going to read the entire chapter. Field Guide to the Spirit World, The Science of Angel Power, Discarnate Entities, and Demonic Possession by Susan B. Martinez, Ph.D., forward by Whitley Strieber, right? So... get this. All right, beautiful people, that is it. And Father, we thank you that you are the unending source of creativity. All right, beautiful people, I love y'all. I will see y'all back here tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace.